Well, I am calling to order this meeting of the Legislative Task Force on Child Protection. I'm Representative Dave Pinto, the co-chair of the task force. We are a little light on members at the moment. We do not have a quorum. I'll identify who we have here, but we have a full agenda, and what I'm inclined to do, and I know we've got folks watching online, and so I'm thinking that we will get started on the substance, and then as we have a quorum, we'll look for approval of minutes, et cetera. And so I'll just acknowledge that the House is represented strongly right now. We've got Representative Jess Hansen, Representative Patricia Mueller, Patty Mueller with us in the room. I know Representative Krista Knudsen is online as well. And we are, I think, short of senators and short a couple of House members as well. But we are expecting a number of them to join us. I know co-chair Champion is tied up in the moment, but is going to be making his way over as he's able to. But we have quite a lot to cover, and so the thought is to get going. Folks will see the agenda in front of them. I'll note for people watching online that our agenda and meeting materials are posted on the task force website, and I'm hoping that there's an easy way that folks can access that. Probably some way to Google to have that information, but the agenda and meeting materials are online. And I'll also cover relating to that we, as a legislature, passed and the governor signed quite a few reforms in 2024, and then a little bit of progress made this past year as well in 2025. You will see that item number 5 on the agenda is an overview of what passed. We're kind of taking things a little bit out of order for various reasons to talk first about our Supreme Court Council on Child Protection, which was established in 2024. We invited the courts to establish that. But overall, this is all about the reforms that were passed, the status of those reforms, kind of where things stand as we will be heading into the 2026 session, with an emphasis, I will say for me, on prevention and recognizing that if we can prevent child abuse, that is, of course, and maltreatment, that's the very best approach that we can possibly take. So we want to highlight that in the agenda as well. I'm going to see if any of our members have questions or anything that they want to bring up before we do that, and we'll keep an eye on Representative Knudsen and others online. And I'll ask staff to please let me know as other members join online so we can acknowledge them. But otherwise, I think what we're going to do then is turn to, well, again, we're going to have to skip the approval of the minutes, item number 2 on the agenda, until we have a quorum. That brings us to item number 3, which is the Supreme Court Council on Child Protection. And we'll turn to Judy Nord, I think, is the first presenter on that, and there is a PowerPoint. Again, this was established in the 2024 session. And Aaron Johnson joining as well. So I don't know if, Ms. Johnson, you're going to be going first, or Judy Nord is, but I'll let the two of you take it away. Whichever of you is going to go first, if you can please introduce yourself for the record and then proceed.
Thank you, Representative Pinto, members of the task force who are present both in person and virtual. My name is Aaron Johnson. I am an assistant Washington County attorney. I also work with the Minnesota County Attorneys Association on legislative and policy members related to child welfare, child protection. And along with Judy, who I will let introduce herself, I am a member of the Minnesota Supreme Court Council on Child Protection and Maltreatment Prevention. And I will turn it over to Judy.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
Judy Nord, yeah, if you can introduce yourself, identify yourself, and then proceed.
Certainly. Good afternoon. My name is Judy Nord. I'm a staff attorney with the State Court Administrator's Office. I am actually retired as of January, but am on special assignment. Thank you. Doesn't really feel like retirement, but I think that's okay. I'm not sure what retirement is really supposed to look like. But I'm happy to serve as the staff attorney for this Supreme Court Council. And I apologize for not being in person right now. I'm actually in Oregon at a child abuse prevention conference. One of the things that the council is looking at is ways to prevent child abuse so that we don't have to deal with all of the ramifications of what abuse can do to children. So I'm learning lots about that right now. And we're going to start with just a brief background of the Supreme Court Council and how that got started. Representative or Chair Pinto, as you had mentioned, it was authorized last May in legislation that authorized the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice to establish the Supreme Court Council. The Chief Justice issued an order in August of 2024 establishing the council, and it is part of Minnesota's court improvement program, which is known as the Children's Justice Initiative. The council was charged with a very broad task, which is to develop a comprehensive blueprint to improve Minnesota's child protection system and to prevent unnecessary entry of children and families into the child protection system. And the council is focusing on ensuring child safety in all of the different pieces of the process that you'll be hearing about as we go forward. The membership of the council is very broad. We're going to have about 20 people on the council. I think we now have about 32 people. Most important of the members of the council are those with lived experience, both parents and youth with lived child protection system experience. We also have representatives from the Department of Children, Youth, and Families that were designated by Commissioner Tiki Brown. And we also have tribal representatives that were designated by the Minnesota Association of Indian Affairs Council. In addition to all the, what I would say, regular members of that are involved in a child protection case, so the judges, the social workers, the county attorneys, the guardians ad litem, the tribal representatives, we also have others involved. We try to include everybody that touches child protection cases in any way. So law enforcement officers who often are called upon to remove children from their homes, child advocacy centers who investigate and help children and families, pediatricians, psychotherapists, the ombudsperson for foster youth, peer recovery specialists, and those are in particular parents who have lived experience with the child protection system, county commissioners, educators, and persons involved with assessing and treating chemical health and mental health.
The time frame we're operating under.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. The time frame we're operating under is that we started in August of 2024, and we will go by statute through January 2026 when the final report from this council is due. We've been meeting ever since that time, generally twice per month for 3 hours each. Those meetings are often in the evening to accommodate the other schedules of all of the members of the council, so it has been a significant time investment outside of normal business hours. We've had 18 meetings since the council began. We've also had a few times where we've branched off into subgroups to talk about specific issues. So in addition to those 18 meetings, there's been some smaller group meetings as well. Our process is really a step-by-step, but as we found, those steps kind of overlap with each other and they're ongoing. Our first thing that we started with in August of 2024 and continues really just up until recently in May 2025 is identification of issues and challenges. We are now segueing to our next step of identifying promising practices and potential solutions. One of the things, in addition to talking amongst the council, that has been done is a number of focus groups with different stakeholders and people who have been involved and are involved in the system have been contacted. There's also been surveys that have been disseminated. And then shortly here in September of 2025, we'll be shifting to really focusing on recommendations in anticipation of that final report that is due in January of 2026. And really what we always try and come back to as we're having all these discussions amongst ourselves and with various stakeholders is coming back to what we really want to do is preventing child abuse and neglect, preventing unnecessary entry of children and families into our system, preventing out-of-home placement so long as it's safe for a child, and really looking at what can we do to improve our existing system. Initially, the council had a number of presentations on topics of interest so that all council members could fully understand the scope of the child welfare system and the issues that are facing it. There are a number of council members who are from areas outside of the child protection system. And those of us who work in the system speak in a lot of acronyms, understand some processes and procedures that if you're not within that system, it can sound a bit like a foreign language. So we wanted to provide that base level foundation for the people who are not in that sort of daily process. And our goal was really to examine all aspects of the child protection system, including the prevention and early intervention stages, and really look at factors to ensure safety, both emotional and physical, for children throughout the whole process.
As Aaron mentioned, as the council has,
Ms. Nord?
oh, thank you, Chair.
Yep.
As the council has moved forward, we've started with discussions following each of the various presentations. What did we learn from what we had just heard? What were some of the issues, the concerns and challenges? Through that process, we've identified, as of May, about 12 pages of challenges, and we're now in the process of kind of organizing those into different categories. So some of the topics include issues related to the social services process, everything from the moment that a report of maltreatment is made through the intake and screening process. We've also have been discussing the court process. So if a child is removed from home, what does that process look like? What are the concerns and the issues related to that process? Everything from the moment a child protection petition is filed through the child protection process and into the permanency process until a child is either reunified or there's permanency for the child. And we've also looked at other segments such as family assessment and family investigation. As part of that, we have had parents speak with us and share their concerns, their stories, from which we learned a lot. We've also had a panel of former foster youth, known as fosters, to come speak to the council. And again, they shared their wisdom, their experience, and their recommendations. There are 4 or 5 different categories of concerns that have been identified. So first, the council has been looking at some general concerns, and those include the need for communities to be involved in maltreatment prevention efforts. It's along the lines of, if you see something, say something. But it doesn't necessarily mean always reporting. Maybe it means supporting the family and finding ways to support the family as a way to help keep the family intact and not unnecessarily removing children from their homes. The committee has also talked about trauma that can happen to children when they are removed from their homes and when they are moved from school to school or from foster placement to foster placement. So those are added levels of trauma. We've talked about the fact that there often isn't enough time during court hearings for the judges and all the parties to discuss everything that's going on with the family and all of the things that the court maybe wants to know more about. There's always time to discuss the basics, but sometimes it's the more detailed things that can really help a family to move forward. And oftentimes, we're learning that there isn't time to do that. As this committee has probably discussed in the past, the Social Services Information System, SSIS, is severely outdated. And we've heard from staff at DCYF, as well as social workers and others, that it often takes more time of a social worker to enter the data into the system than they're actually spending with families.
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you,
Okay, and by the way, I'm just going to note we have been joined online by Representative Kim Hicks, and so glad to have her with us. Ms. Johnson, please continue.
Thank you, Representative Pinto, Chair Pinto. Another major concern that has been identified by the council is workforce concerns, and that's both the workforce within the child protection system, social workers, attorneys, judges, and then the workforce of providers that we rely on outside of the system to assist families, mental health and chemical health providers in particular. We're seeing a significant turnover in the workforce in many sectors, whether that's social workers, attorneys, and we're also seeing a lack of professionals in some areas of the workforce, such as mental health. We're also seeing and identifying inconsistent training or experience across all of the stakeholder systems. Funding, of course, anything that comes before the legislature always has a funding component, right? Funding concerns as well. One of the important things to know that has been identified is that the bulk of child protection funding in the state of Minnesota comes from property taxes. And so what we are seeing is some disparities based on geographical location, what the property tax base is in a given county, and what resources and services might be available to a children and families based on where they live and some of the differing outcomes that can occur because of that particular factor. Another major concern that has been identified across the board is just a lack of resources. I noted earlier a lack of mental health and chemical health professionals. There's just a lack of services in general to help families from the prevention side who are trying to protect their children. Lack of affordable, stable housing is a very large issue for the population that we work with. Lack of daycare assistance, lack of mental health treatment facilities, especially in the outstate Minnesota area, outside the metro area. And even when we look at things like telehealth or virtual, the lack of consistent broadband services to make that an option. And then just lack of access to chemical health assessment and treatment as well. Ultimately, we were able to organize all of those issues and concerns into 6 focus areas, and so we created categories to classify or put those into: maltreatment prevention, child well-being, court processes and procedures, social services processes and procedures, workforce development, and funding streams. And I will now turn to Judy Nord, to talk about some of the promising practices and potential solutions that the council has been working with.
And Judy Nord, back to you.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. So as Aaron had mentioned earlier, we're kind of going through this process in 3 main phases. We're now moving into the phase where we're concentrating more on promising practices and potential solutions, while still identifying challenges through the different focus groups and the survey that was launched in August. So one of the first areas that we're starting to talk about is how do we prevent child maltreatment? And there's a number of different things that we've learned about that seem to be promising. One is something that is already being done in Minnesota, and we're exploring what it would look like to expand that. And those are family resource centers. One of the things that we've learned in talking with parents and children that have been involved in the child protection system is that while they may have wanted to reach out for help, they maybe didn't do that because of the stigma that's attached to that. And not only the stigma that's attached to that, but also the fear of once they do reach out, then being reported to child protection and potentially losing their children. So instead of that, there now are in many counties family resource centers where parents can go to get the help that they need without hopefully the fear or the stigma that's attached to it. At those resource centers, if a family, for example, is on potentially the verge of losing their home, there's someone there that could help them so that they don't face eviction. If they're facing food insecurities or transportation issues or medical or mental health issues, the family resource centers can be that hub within a community where parents can go and not be ostracized for asking for help. One of the things that the council first identified when we first started meeting is that I think everyone who has children can recognize that parenting is hard. And so one of the slogans or public service announcements that we're thinking about recommending is parenting is hard, ask for help. It's akin to what you might have seen years ago with the smoking campaign, the no smoking campaigns, where there was public service announcements about quitting smoking or not drinking during pregnancies. So something along those lines. We've also learned that the involvement of the entire community is really important. And community doesn't mean just your city or your town. It could mean your school community, your organizational community, your community of peers. All of those people can be involved in different ways to help families to prevent child abuse from happening in the first place. We've also learned that one way to prevent child maltreatment is to make sure that families have supported living environments. People that are on the verge of homelessness have a lot of stress in their life, and oftentimes that stress results in maltreatment of children because sometimes parents just don't know what to do, and crying babies can be bothersome. But as I was driving home not too long ago, I saw a billboard that says something along the lines of shaking kills, crying does not. So it's one of those things where if we can find ways to help families who are going through these difficult times and prevent child abuse, that would be of most help. We've also been learning about hospital to home programs. While I've been here in Oregon these last few days, one of the things that they've talked about is hospital programs where you have this newborn child, and when you're in the hospital, you're maybe given some help and instruction on how to care for this baby, and then you go home and you're on your own. In many of the states, they have these visiting programs where someone from the hospital, associated with the hospital, will come to the home to check on you once or twice a week to make sure that you're doing and getting all the help that you need to care for your newborn child. The next area that we're looking at in terms of solutions is improving the child protection system itself. And that includes consistent, high-quality training for everyone. For example, right now, there is no consistent training for attorneys for parents. When you become a judge, you don't necessarily receive any training to do that. There's also not training for other categories of people who need to be involved in the child protection system. So development of a curriculum that can be used by all the different categories of people is something that the council is thinking about. Also defining the people that are involved in a child protection system. Under the juvenile protection rules that exist right now, not all parents or, for example, alleged parents are not involved in the child protection system as parties. They could be identified as participants, but that means that they don't have all of the rights and responsibilities of those who are parties. So that's something that the council may be looking at. Also,
I should tell you, we had budgeted 15 minutes for this,
Okay.
for the total presentation. So yeah, maybe if we can maybe come back for details if folks have questions, but I know there's
Sure,
quite a
happy
few
to do
slides
that.
to get through. So yeah, if you don't mind, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Okay, so Erin, I think that's you next.
Yes, I will go through this quickly in the interest of time. I referenced earlier a number of focus groups that the council has been convening that has started in June of this year and continues through September. There has been approximately 3 to 4 per month. There's been a number of different stakeholder groups that the council has reached out to. There's been a geographic, racial, and gender diversity focus of trying to get, for each focus group, that composition in place. there's similar question. So here's a group of the focus group categories, which I think I won't go through those. You can all look at that. But as you see, we're trying to catch as wide a swath as possible of folks who might be impacted or could have insight or recommendations for us. One thing I will note is that all of those focus group categories, there is a confidentiality of identity. We understand that some of these focus group participants are from communities who might not feel comfortable in speaking with a government group, so to speak, so that's been made very clear. We are asking similar questions of each focus group, just about things, for example, what could be done to help prevent child maltreatment, what improvements are needed in the system, how could the system be improved, what are the strengths, things like that. And again, those questions are in the PowerPoint if you want to see those in more detail. We also are engaging some groups in surveys. I'll defer to Judy to talk about those.
And
I won't
might
spend a lot of,
have you do so pretty quickly if you can, just so we can keep moving.
sure, I won't actually spend a lot of time on the survey, just to note that the survey was launched in August, and it'll be, actually, let's take that back. It was launched in July. It'll be ending next week, actually, and we hope to get the results sometime in the next month or so. The last thing I would note is that we are now moving forward to align the different challenges with potential solutions. And I won't go through those details because they will likely change by the time we get to the final report. The last thing I would say is that our final report will be submitted in January, by January 15th.
Amazing.
And
I
thank
might actually have whoever's controlling the PowerPoint just go back a slide to those, to that
Sorry.
challenges and potential solutions. Not sure who's able to do that. But
I
just
can do that.
as that's coming up, yeah, as you're doing that. And so I guess, because this feels like an especially exciting column to me, this list of potential solutions. These are the sorts of things we would then expect to see, not necessarily exactly right, but in the report to us in January of the sorts of changes you all would recommend. Is that looking, Ms. Johnson, maybe you can?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Chair Pinto. Yes, that's our hope, is to take really that column that's listed as potential solutions and come down with some concrete recommendations that could be implemented. And we're mindful of, there's been a lot of working groups, there's been a lot of work over the years on child protection issues, and what we really hope to focus on are concrete, tangible recommendations as opposed to more broad sort of statements of, we should fix this. Well, how can we fix that? That's our goal.
Thank you, that's great. I'll turn to Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate it. I'm one of the folks in the legislature that carries a lot of child protection bills and reforms to try to get us here. So I'm really glad to see that much of this report so far really does reflect the agenda that has been happening here, almost verbatim. So it's validating to see that we're on the same page, coming at these from different perspectives, but arriving in the same place is good. I also want to shout out the Scott County Family Resource Center because they've been doing a really great job. So anybody in a county that's listening, that's interested in learning more about how those family resource centers really do show in the data an upstream approach that is meaningful and effective prevention, and sometimes intervention, but hopefully early prevention as much as we can, and how well that's working in Scott County. So just want to give them a shout out for that. And then the one other question I have would maybe for you or for the speaker online, or just for the council, maybe to bring back at another time for me. I'm looking for anybody who has advice or suggestions about how us as policymakers, those of us carrying bills like this, to increase the workforce and to address these things kind of one at a time. It's my work that we worked on together in the Children and Families Committee for the SSIS funding, and a lot of juggling we had to do. But a lot of times when I'm talking to folks about some of these things that we need to do, people just aren't familiar with the complexities of this system. And so it ends up that I hit kind of a wall in trying to do what's best, what the data tells us, what your council's telling us is best and right. But I hit these barriers with whether it's agency staff, county staff, maybe it's funding concerns, things like that, and even with my own colleagues. despite my experience in this and my proven wins in this. So I'm just curious if there's any advice you could ever offer to any of us policymakers about how to do that, or how you could partner with us when we experience that pushback in order to do this. One thing, for example, like aligning our kinship stuff with the national, standards was really hard just to get a little bit of movement last year. And so I think we know that report says if we have, for example, the bars, if those are higher than what they suggest on the national standard, you're manufacturing disparities. We don't want to do that. We know better. And so I'm looking for all the advice I can get about how we as a body can do better. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson and Ms. Nord. Ms. Johnson, to you.
I can certainly answer that. Thank you, Representative Mueller, Chair Pinto. One thing I will say is what I have seen in the past is reaching out to the folks who do this work and sort of a partnership there. Just last year, I believe, Pine County worked with their commissioners and their legislatures, as well as their tribal partners in the area, and they brought everybody together to come actually to Pine County Social Services. And one of the things they did is they sat and showed everybody how SSIS works. And that, I think, was a really big eye-opener, almost a ride-along, if you will. I think that can be really helpful. I would also note, a few years ago, the Department of Human Services at that point, along with MAXA and the Minnesota County Attorneys Association, did put on a series of educational presentations for the legislature to, I think, really get to the issue, Representative, that you are talking about, the complexity of the child protection system, and just looking to try and provide some base foundational knowledge, because when we are trying to get into the weeds and make these changes, it is difficult because you do have to sometimes start 10 steps back to explain why this is important. I don't want to speak for my partners with MAXA or DCYF necessarily, but I imagine if that was something that the legislature felt might be beneficial in the future, that's something we could revisit. So I think what I would recommend is reaching out, whether it's at a larger scale sort of thing, like presentations to the legislature, or reaching out to the people who work in your individual districts, because they really, I'm sure, would be willing to meet with you and also show you what exactly is going on with issues that are specific to the areas of the state, because they are different. The issues that are happening in Thief River Falls are vastly different than what's happening in Minneapolis.
Representative Hansen, back to you.
Thank you, Chair, and that's super helpful. So I hope my colleagues, if they ever tune into this YouTube video and watch it ever, that'd be great for them to hear that part. This is work I've definitely done, and trying to get my colleagues to do the same is a challenge. I'll just be frank about that. But it is such important work. And so we end up with, this pushback. And so I guess my bigger kind of point I want to make is that we need the folks in this room and folks from this council to show up here in the legislature. Because I'm just one person. I can talk to a lot of people in a day because I talk fast, but I can't do all of it. And my storytelling is not always going to be what changes people's minds and moves them. And I need folks to understand, we have to follow the data on this, and the data is telling us to do a lot of what's recommended here. And we are putting kids at risk when we don't. And so I would love to see more folks who took time to be part of this council to take more time and help me out once we get to the legislative session and show up and testify and stay in tune with what's happening on our committee, because I frequently bring up the issues that I need folks to know about there too. So please help with that. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll note that we've been joined by Senator, Karen Housley is with us online. So I'm glad to have you with us, Senator. So looking to see if there are any other questions or comments regarding the Supreme Court Council. I'll just note that I'm really grateful to the courts for taking this on, and then to the members of the council. There was some talk about doing some of the work the council's doing through some sort of task force with legislators on it, et cetera. And I'll just note that you all have had 18 3-hour meetings in not that long, and are doing putting a lot of work in a pretty short amount of time. And so just gratitude to the members of this council and all the work that you're doing, and to the courts for taking this on. I'm really eager to see the report. So just looking to see if anybody else has anything to say or ask. Not seeing anything. So thank you so much, Darren Johnson and Judy Nord, for your work, and thanks to all those involved in the council. I think we're done with this agenda item. Thank you so much. And so
you.
I'll ask Commissioner St. George to make your way on up as you're able. I think they're going to be the one doing this next presentation. And as you make your way up, I'll note, we heard discussion about prevention a lot in the council's presentation. It's in the name maltreatment prevention. The Parent Support Outreach Program is a particular program we're going to learn more about that I've been intrigued about and kind of was taking chair's prerogative, I guess, to make sure to highlight a program that I think is deserving of substantially more funding, can make a huge difference in families' lives, but then to use that as an opportunity to talk more broadly. I'll just note again before calling the commissioner that our attention tends to be drawn, and it makes such sense that it would be, when after abuse has happened and responding to horrific situations involving abuse of children, and we should do that. We need to do that. We're going to talk further about later this task force meeting about some of those incidents. And what doesn't get nearly as much attention is if we can prevent maltreatment by providing families with what they need, that's going to be much better for the child, much better for the family, much better for all of us. And yet it's not something we tend to focus, doesn't tend to draw dollars quite as easily. And we want to make sure to highlight that. So Commissioner, welcome to you. So glad to have you here. If you can identify yourself and then proceed with your presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Representative Chair Pinto. To be clear, I'm Assistant Commissioner.
I'd like to Assistant Commissioner St.
Thank
George.
you for the promotion. I
Indeed,
really appreciate it.
very glad.
I have been here just in September, so it's still new to me. Do you?
And yep. Yep.
I will just jump in. First thing I want to talk about today is our Parent Support Outreach Program. The Parent Support Outreach Program.
I want to make sure, can we get to make sure the microphone is picking you up? It was seeming a little bit worried that it wasn't so much. Yeah, if you can just get yourself, especially for the folks online.
Is that better?
That is definitely better, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so this plays right into what you were just talking about, Chairman.
That was the idea.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
The goal of, I'm referring to the Parent Support Outreach Program as PSOP, just for ease. So the goal of PSOP is to promote family well-being, to prevent maltreatment and any involvement in the child protection system. We serve families with children aged 10 or younger who are at risk of maltreatment. So a lot of the referrals for PSOP come from screened out maltreatment reports. There's other pathways into PSOP, such as community and self-referrals. It's voluntary, it's a short-term intervention, and primarily includes case management services for families. Some agencies also provide some other flexible funding through PSOP. Funding is primarily through the federal Community-Based Child Abuse Prevention Grant and state expansion funding. Important to note that those funds have not increased since the statewide expansion of PSOP in 2013.
Can I ask, though, regarding the federal grant, the Child Abuse Prevention Grant, or Community-Based Child Abuse Prevention Grant, that's not something that has been impacted so far in federal action? And do we know if there's a proposal relating to it in the president's latest budget proposal? Like, do we happen to know that? You may not, and I don't want to put you on the spot if not, but.
It hasn't been, has it? I have not heard of any
change
impact.
to it? Okay.
Not on this program, no.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So funding is provided to counties and initiative tribes through a formula-based allocation. So that's how we decide how much they get, dependent on child population and previous cases. Implementation varies across the 87 counties and the initiative tribes who also are impacted.
It says there's implementation varies based on about where PSOP is housed. What are some examples of where this program might be housed?
It is housed in the social services, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you say that implementation varies among the 87 counties and 2 initiative tribes in several respects, one of which is where PSOP is housed. So just wondering sort of in what ways does it vary? Kind of what are some examples of the varying housing of PSOP? Am I testing you all?
I'm just going to admit that I don't know.
That's just fine. You've got a broad remit.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody in the room has an answer, they can maybe give it to us. By the time we're done with PSOP.
Okay,
We'll see,
we'll
or
look
else you
for
can get
that.
it to us later. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Just understanding more. Okay.
Thank you, yeah. And here's a quick view of how many families have received it in the past 10 years. So you can see on the left, there's There's only the number of PSOP cases opened each year. Some cases move across the year, and so this is just the new cases opened each year by fiscal year. You can see there's been a relatively steady increase in families served, with a little bit of a dip in 2020, and on the right, you can also see the race and ethnicity breakdown of families receiving PSOP during this time.
And you can tell I'm very interested in this, so I'm taking advantage of the time.
It's a great program.
Given that the amount has stayed flat, and yet the number of families has increased, I guess the math would say the amount received by each of those families must have gone down.
The amount
Logically, yes.
available to support the families has gone
To
down.
each individual family, because if the amount has stayed the same and total number of families gone up, then, okay, total amount per family has gone down. All right, thank you.
The way PSOP works is within the, oh, hold on, I think.
We're going to phone a friend.
Okay, back to your question about
Yeah,
how.
thank you.
Some counties house it within their social services. Some grant the money out to like community resource centers or family resource centers.
Okay, so it could be inside a county government. It might be that they do a grant out to a community nonprofit that may run it then.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for
thank you,
that.
Sarah. The way it works is within what's called a Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework, which is sort of a research-informed approach to increase family strengths, to enhance child development, and to reduce the likelihood of maltreatment and system involvement. Focus is on providing access to concrete support and supportive services that address a family's needs and help minimize the stress caused by some of those challenges. So recently, DCYF has developed a couple of reports about PSOP that, looking at it, a qualitative continuous quality improvement project was done in partnership with the Improve Group in 2023 through 2024. That report is in the final stages for publishing. That project aimed to answer what areas of PSOP can be improved to better support families and children and what those improvements could look like. That qualitative review was conducted by interviewing parents and providers, so sort of a broad array of people. The MMB study came after the qualitative report. In this one, DCYF was interested in complementing the project with a quantitative study of the program. So we partnered with MMB to have their impact evaluation unit lead this descriptive study to better understand how PSOP is implemented and the outcomes. MMB used administrative data to conduct the study, which means that the results describe the data, but don't say anything about cause and effect.
And you said the CQI report is expected to come out
Soon. I don't
Soon.
know if I have a date, but
okay.
we're
I
gonna
mean,
get it.
like before the end of the year?
Oh,
we
yeah.
expect?
I
Okay.
believe it's, yeah.
And the MMB report? Is that out yet, or is that
Date for
also?
that? I don't think we have a date for that one yet.
Okay, this may have been an ill-timed presentation then, because we could have
no,
had two
no.
reports soon
We
enough.
do.
It looks
Is
Ms.
that
Summerfield. Looks like Ms. Summerfield.
I'm sorry, I'm getting this wrong.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we'll follow up with you on that afterwards. We just need to confirm that.
Okay, can you confirm your identification, please, since you're speaking for the first time?
I apologize, yes. I always forget that. Hi, Jennifer Summerfeld, Government Relations Director at the Department of Children, Youth, and Families.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay. And this leads us to key takeaways slide, I think?
Yes, thank you. So we do have some of those from both of these reports.
Okay.
One of the things that was exciting to see is that PSOP is meeting the goal of preventing involvement or further involvement in child welfare and promoting family well-being and children's well-being. So more than half of the families who received PSOP didn't have any further child welfare involvement within a year. In counties where PSOP services were contracted out, meaning some or all of the services, which is what we were just talking about, fewer cases were subsequently involved in child welfare reporting and investigation. So some of the changes we're looking at to how it's implemented might improve, make it a little bit better. For instance, one recommendation that came from the CQI project is to move PSOP out of child protection agencies, right? So which I think the Supreme Court Counsel was talking a little bit about that, how people don't want to go there. They don't want to be seen there. Multiple participants from the study identified that as at least an initial barrier. Providers in smaller counties described feeling it was especially challenging to differentiate their roles because they had previously worked with families in a child protection role and were now trying to create a different relationship as PSOP workers. So a clear distinction between child protection and PSOP could alleviate that initial hesitation and invite more participants. Additionally, changes to the strengths and needs assessment process could support defining goals and the resources a family receives. The current process may omit parent perspectives and the opportunity for self-determination in guiding and deciding what they need for themselves and their families. Additionally, access to peer mentoring to support parents and families may help to build social capital, which is a key component of the whole family system approach that DCYF is investing in. State expansion funding, so back to what you said before, hasn't increased since 2013, even though there's been a growth in population and the number of families served. So parents and providers identified that there's a need for more workers, additional time to work on PSOP cases exclusively, and finally expanding the program and supporting those recommendations requires a dedicated and ongoing funding to support the continuation and maintain its effectiveness.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think we won't move on. If you can go back, I think we're not going to start the next section yet. I will have a few questions, but I'll go to Representative Hansen first.
Thank you,
Hansen.
Chair. I just have a question about when the PSOP services were contracted out, will the final report show like the cost differences between how much it is to do at a county versus how much it is to have it contracted out, or some averages, or at least so we can understand? It's a big question about when we put tax dollars, towards such a critical services into these kinds of processes to other organizations. So we just want to make sure we are prepared to address those questions. And if it's more effective, it's working. So I'm not questioning the legitimacy of it, but just from a cost perspective.
Commissioner, thoughts on that?
Thank you, Chair, thank you. Do we know this?
So you got a friend going to help you out again.
I got a
Commissioner.
quick answer for you. The answer is no. These reports will not be looking at that.
The reports will not look at the difference in cost. Can I just confirm before I send it back to Representative Hansen? I want to be absolutely sure I'm understanding that bullet. It says in counties where the services were contracted out, fewer cases were subsequently involved. Is that saying that's as compared with counties where services were not contracted out? Is that correct? Because I'm not so sure. Yeah, Commissioner, can you clarify that bullet?
That's my understanding, but let me get back to you to make sure that I've got that accurate.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Representative Hansen, back to you. Anything?
Thank you, Chair. That was, I was getting at the similar
Yeah.
thing here.
Yeah.
Just, I'm trying to look at the cost difference and kind of the ROI, right? Is it better to contract out, or is it better to do it? And maybe it's different by county, right? Maybe rural
Right.
counties will see one thing and it's more cost efficient there. So not getting rid of the option for state tax dollars to go to outside agencies like nonprofits is critically important to protecting children, I guess is the point that I wanted to also make.
Well, I'm even wondering so I think we need to have you confirm for us afterwards exactly what this bullet means, because as you were talking, I wondered if what you were saying was that fewer cases were suddenly involved in child welfare reporting than for families that hadn't received PSOP service. Like, the distinction wasn't contracted out or not, even though that's how the bullet is written. It was actually PSOP services versus not. So the point is, we just need you to clarify for us, because if in fact there is a difference between contracted out or not, well, either way, right, important for us to know. So if we can get that, that'd be really, really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. And this actually is, I've been a teacher for almost 20 years, and I will be a long-term sub in one of my local schools. And we actually just talked about PSOP just 2 days ago. And this was one of the things that was talked about quite a bit, about being very helpful for our families. But the recommendations that you're initially finding about moving PSOP outside of CPS has been confirmed in my county very well, because as they're screened out, or if they're not found to be something that needs to be screened in at all, the current director of PSOP in Moore County is just cold calling families because they don't know what to do afterwards, and they're too scared of being called into law enforcement or to some other places, but it's a part of CPS, and so they're not quite sure what this looks like. And so he's literally just cold calling families. And once he calls and tells them, hey, you're not in trouble, we just want to be able to help you, then they seem to be very, receptive to the supports. But if our first initial response is to, let's deal with what we have in front of us, but our second big major responsibility is to do prevention, then if this is what we have currently set up, then we need to make sure that our families are able to access seeing it in a way that makes a lot of sense and does bring agency to them. Thank you.
I will have a few questions. Oh, it looks like, wait for Commissioner.
So they have better outcomes there? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, Commissioner St. George, that's okay, yeah. Was there something you wanted to add or correct from the conversation?
We've got some information about the outcomes.
Late breaking, no problem.
Oh, people are more likely to use the resources, kind of what the representative was saying, about when they go to community resource centers, when they go outside of the county process.
Okay, so to confirm then, from this key takeaway, that second bullet, it's saying that families are more likely to use services where they are contracted out rather than within CPS, so consistent with what Representative Mueller was just saying.
Correct.
And then they are also less likely to be subsequently involved in child welfare reporting and investigation.
Correct.
So sort of, Commissioner, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but that then, I guess, then leads to Representative Hansen's question, which is sort of, what are the difference in cost, sort of overall, probably good to know what the differences are, to the extent that you have that information, because that seems like a pretty important point. As you all confirm, we'll let you confer, and then we'll have Representative Hansen ask a question or comment, but we'll make sure you get a chance to, if you need to talk to Ms. Florman, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Oh, the way it works. What that is answering.
Costs to the state are the same.
Commissioner.
Okay, just, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner,
So
please.
just clarifying that the way it works right now, the cost for the state is the same regardless of whether the counties contract out or not.
Okay.
Because the counties are going to get the same amount, whether they're choosing to use it, to contract out or to do it
Internally
in-house.
or externally?
Yeah, and so that cost to the state remains the same. Return on investment might be a different question, I think somebody had mentioned, as far as our, if more families are using it.
But if they're less likely to be involved in future reporting or investigation, that's a better outcome, right? Because that means they're less likely to have a maltreatment report, but.
Potentially.
Yeah.
We don't know that, but yes, potentially.
Well, but I want to confirm, the bullet says there are fewer cases subsequently involved in child welfare reporting investigation. So it does sound like you have data that shows that
Correct.
they're less likely to be involved or.
Correct. We don't know why at this point. But
Sure.
Yeah.
But we just know that's happening. Representative Hansen, finally back to you, please.
Thank you. And this is a good conversation because I want to make sure, who's doing it better? And like I said, maybe it's at a county, the county's doing it better in one area versus in the cities, maybe there's nonprofits that do it better. And I think the through line that I want to highlight is that it is important for us to sometimes do direct appropriations to organizations that are directly helping families and make sure that we can do that. Because I know the conversation in the legislature has long been some skepticism about getting those kinds of dollars there. But this is an example of a program that government may not be the best one to provide that service necessarily, and sometimes they might be. And so making sure that we're getting the tax dollars in that county, maybe it's a county-based, way we do it or whatever, but if we're looking at the fourth bullet of trying to increase funding, these are some of the things I need to know to make a good case for how to increase funding. And so that's the second kind of through line of my questioning here is just trying to understand how can I help you get this, maybe an increase in this funding at some point in time down the road, should we have those resources to do that? And I think my colleagues and my peers will want that information.
Although we've been joined by Senator Cruin online, so Senator, welcome to you. We're getting closer to a quorum here and appreciate as we're going along. And if we can go back a couple slides to slide 3, the PSOP goal prevent involvement slide, if that's possible. And I just wanted to ask, in the description, that second area, short-term intervention, et cetera, can you just, I guess I had understood that quite a bit of PSOP is, whether it's a child protection worker or an entity that works with a family recognizes that they need, maybe they need a crib, or they need, certainly a referral for food service, or they need something, but maybe something that's going to cost a relatively small amount of money, but can really make a difference for a family. And I guess, could you just put some make that description area a little more concrete about the kinds of things that PSOP dollars are buying that would prevent maltreatment.
I can, hold on 1 second.
And if you need to get back on this and a couple other questions, that's okay too, of course.
So, Chair.
Here we go. No, that's not it. It is flexible. The funding tends to be flexible. There's case management money for that, but there's also flexible fundings that my understanding is somewhat dictated by whoever's running the program. But I will get, it's really, really broad.
I get, okay. Representative Mueller, I think, has a thought or
Yeah,
question.
And, well, and
Representative
thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, from the presentation that I just listened to at my local
Yeah.
county, they have because it's short-term intervention, 3 to 6 months is what they were telling me, and that the money is one of those for incidental costs, but if there's something else like heating assistance or housing assistance or some other type, or food assistance, that this was also the place where they were able to find all the resources that they could get. So like or that they qualified for, right? So heating assistance, they often referred to SIMCAC, or food assistance, they were referred to CLUES or some other places, so that it was kind of a catch-all where they were able to then have that point person that could access them to those things. So it's supposed to be kind of a reference point, but also nimble funding, which is why, going back to Representative Hansen's point, I think each county will be a little different in that way. Maybe the county will set up something. I know Austin has a welcome center or community action building that kind of has all these resources in one place. But maybe other places do contract out for other places, and they're able to find one area that they can go and access all of those or be pointed to those. So it's a matter of how well they know their community to be able to do that. Thank you, Mr.
It sounds like we do have, and thank you, Representative Mueller. It sounds like we have someone from Scott County who can answer some questions about PSOP, and it might be, I think the question I have, is maybe kind of specific. I wouldn't want to take too much longer on this, but Commissioner, I wonder if that would make sense to have Suzanne from Scott County come up, unless you had something else you were going to say?
I would love that.
You would love to have a friend from Scott County join you, okay.
I would love our friends
Come
from
on
Scott
up,
County to join us.
if you
Thank
can.
you. Well, I'm so glad.
There we go. We've got our Scott County representative is very happy that Scott County is here. So if you could please identify yourself, and then if you're able to give, just kind of make things a little, well, yeah, thank you for the microphone assistance. Please identify yourself, and if you can help to answer the question.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. Good afternoon. Suzanne Arnson, Deputy Health and Human Services Director with Scott County. And I'm going to speak about PSOP, specifically from our local level. And so currently, we receive PSOP funding through our state, and that we use the funding specifically to support one full-time PSOP worker who works directly out of our Family Resource Center. So the funding is used to support the position. Property tax or levy dollars are used to help support the very concrete needs I think, Chair Pinto, you were referencing. So things like pack-and-plays, car seats, economic supports to get a family through whatever the presenting circumstances are. And so that work, we look at that, I think similar to some of the outcomes that Assistant Commissioner St. George referenced, is really around how is it we are using PSOP to support preventing entry into the child protection system. And while I haven't looked at my data today, we are about 85% where families who engage in PSOP services do not enter child protection system within at least 1 year of closing of the PSOP case. Now, I'm aware, I can't speak to specifics, other counties use different models. Again, they may contract it out. I think there are some counties who may also use public health for PSOP services. So I think there's some variety across the state of what that could look like.
Thank you. That is really helpful. And can you give a sense as to how much below the need? Like if we said we're going to fully fund PSOP, so any family who needs the resource from PSOP, I have the sense I'll say that we're in sort of like the 2 or 3% of the need that we're meeting in PSOP. Could be wrong, but I'd love to know, because this slide just tells us $4 million, but like how much would be needed for families to then potentially prevent child abuse. Commissioner, I'm not sure if that's for you.
I mean, it might be, thank you, but that's not a number I have right now.
Understood. And so what I'd ask if folks can do this, and because I kind of do feel like maybe a little bit I'm going to reflect Representative Hansen here. I first learned about PSOP, I don't know, a couple years ago, and I feel like I've been asking, basically anybody who's listening to this who likes PSOP, could you please come to us with a gap between, hey, would you put this much more into PSOP and we could prevent that much more maltreatment, and this is how much money we would take to do it? That'd be great. I know the administration, you're constrained because there's a governor's budget. You have to balance a lot of things out, but the rest of you aren't constrained, so please come on up, show up. Can't guarantee you make it through the budget process, but we do need to have somebody actually come and propose something to us. And the frustration I'm feeling a little bit is like knowing that this is good. I'll just say the charts that I've seen have shown like some counties get like a couple $1,000s for PSOP or something, which I just don't know how you can help families very much with that amount of money. So Commissioner, any comments you want to make, or don't feel obligated, but just.
I don't disagree with you. How about that?
Fair enough. I'll take that. I'll take that as a win. That's all good.
Thank you.
And anything that our friend from Scott County wants to add in response to any of that?
No, I would echo Chair Pinto, just the piece of, I don't have the answer of what number of dollars or funding. I think the idea and the energy being talked about today, focusing on prevention, how do we move upstream, it is an exciting conversation. So appreciate your attention to that.
Thank you for that. And again, I'll say that the dynamics, just sort of attention dynamics around here in general in society very much go against prevention, which means that anybody who is in favor of spending on prevention has to work, I'm sorry to say this, has to work that much harder to say, and even if you can't give us a number to fully fund, if somebody can say, listen, if you could give us an extra $20 million for PSOP, here's what that would buy. And maybe that gets whittled down to an extra $500,000 or $50, I don't know. But somebody has to come to us and say, this is what we need. And obviously, if any of I've been going off, so my colleagues should feel free if they want to weigh in. But I wanted to focus on this because it feels like a real opportunity, and we're spending very little, really, for the bang that we're getting from our bucks. So, okay. We've spent quite a bit of time on this. I'll see if there's anybody else who wishes to join in. Otherwise, we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. Thank you so much for the insight into PSOP, thank you. And we will move on then to the rest of our DCYF presentation. And members, this is moving us to topic number 5 in our agenda, having gone through 3 and 4. If we do reach a quorum, we'll go back to number 2 and approve the minutes. And otherwise, we're going to talk about the 24-25 legislation. It looks like we're going to start with the 25 legislation, it looks like in your presentation, and move to 24. And so, Commissioner, we'll go back to you.
Thank you. And I won't spend a ton of time on this since you all passed all these things. You probably know some about them. One of the highlights, mandated reporter training modifications. There's been some changes in the requirements for how we train mandated reporters, the ones who come to the training academy that DCYF runs. Fentanyl has been added into the statute that governs methamphetamine-related crimes involving children. There's been quite a few asks for that. We have, or you, technically, have modified the definition of neglect in reporting maltreatment. This one means for children who are sort of languishing in emergency care because we can't find anywhere else to put them, that used to be required neglect report through child protection. We've removed that requirement. There's been a modification in DCYF licensing to provide expanded definitions of related individuals and relative foster care licensing requirements. And there's a change that allows parties to file an appeal in district court for commissioner orders involving maltreatment determinations in which alleged maltreatment occurred in another state or country.
And as you move on, again, I'll note that we did a lot of reforms in 2024, and so these a lot of what was happening in 25, I think, was you all implementing those 24 reforms. We'll get to that in a second, but we've had a couple of these cleanup items. So thank you. I don't see questions about this first slide, so I think we can move to the second one then.
Okay, thank you. More highlights, modifications to the Indian Child Welfare Grant reporting and award limits. There's a prevention response to educational neglect reports. There's been change there. Court reviews for children aging out of foster care are now required. There's an expansion of the public-private permanency collaboration to allow provision of services related to kinship. And there has been child welfare IT modernization has been passed.
We'll see if there are questions that folks have regarding the 2025 highlights. Some of these will be that child welfare IT modernization referring to SSIS, and I guess we don't have more on that. No, we will be talking further about that. Yes, okay, right. I forgot we built that into this section.
Correct.
Okay, well then in that case, we'll move, not seeing hands or questions, we'll move on to the 2024 implementation then.
2024. Oh, this is where you get to hear about
We get to
child
move on.
welfare IT
And-
modernization.
And I'll note that, so these 2024 reforms, then, we're kind of talking through each of them in depth, I guess, in turn. And so starting with the IT modernization. And so we've got Laura Hatfield, I believe?
Yes.
Yes, okay, hi, yeah, please
Can you hear
identify
me
yourself,
okay?
proceed.
Hi, I'm Laura Hatfield. I'm also new, actually newer, so I get to claim that one.
Welcome.
Thank you. I joined DCYF in January, and shortly before that, I was at DHS. But I started my career as a child protection social worker in Wisconsin, which is another county-administered state. And then I spent 7 years in the private sector building and implementing technology for child welfare in every county-administered state and a couple state-administered ones as well.
You are
and
clearly eminently qualified, so
think so
glad
too,
to have
thank
you.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
So the last couple of years of my time in the private sector was to working alongside CWIS projects, just like the one that we're about to take on. So I'm super excited to be here, along with Cynthia Shipowski is on the line, who I believe you may know, who has been in front of you before in the past. She is our CWIS supervisor. We have a dedicated supervisor for this project now, alongside all of our staff who currently work on SSIS. So I'm here to talk very high level. I could talk about this for 2 hours, and I have been told I have 5 minutes. But I'm happy to come back and give my dissertation on CWIS whenever you would like to hear it. But want to provide a very high level 2-minute history of how we got to where we are today to ground us all. SSIS, as many who are in this room and online know much better than I and have lived this for many, many years, was first developed in 1999. It's actually not our oldest system at DCYF, but it's definitely not a spring chicken either. And that was after the federal administration passed significant funding into what we call SACWIS systems. That's sort of like phase 1 of case management systems in child welfare. And there are still staff who remember when SSIS was first implemented. Isn't that right, Suzanne? So we have done this before, but it's been a while. And since that time, we have been remodeling that house. I will be using a house metaphor throughout. So hopefully we have some handy people here. But if SSIS is a house, we have remodeled that house for 25 years. And unique to some of the other states who are our peers, and we particularly talk a lot with our county admin peers because their setups are very similar to ours. We are unique in that, not solely unique, but definitely not the norm, that we have built this house in-house, DIY, with our own builders. Many states contract that work out to vendors and got transfer systems from other states, and we built this one custom here in Minnesota. And so this has turned into a mansion over those 25 years that is, to say complex would be putting it mildly. It is a very complex, complicated, homegrown, custom solution. And in 2016, the federal government passed what is known as CWIS, Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System legislation that provided new funding and with a lot of requirements and encouragement to think about case management systems differently. SACWIS was really based around the persona of the state and reporting out on data to the federal government, and they're encouraging us to think about other personas like the worker who uses the system and has to enter that. And having been one, I can tell you that that is not unique to Minnesota. That is an arduous task. And we are lucky that we have friends in lots of places trying to solve the same problem. So when they passed that legislation, they asked every state to declare how will you get to CWIS. And Minnesota officially declared as transitional in 2018, which means we're going to remodel our house that we live in today to get there. And we've been working on that since that time. Thankfully, you all have passed 2 different times some significant investment that we are calling new house money. So that means that we get to build a new house. And that also means that we have to start planning in a really different way and deciding what that house needs to do and thinking about it, not just replicating what our house does for us today, because I think lots of people who live in that house would say that's not always the best experience. But how can we reimagine the house in a different way to serve folks in the way we want to? So if we can go to the next slide, please. I'll be letting you know a little bit about what that planning is going to be looking like this year. So again, I just want to emphasize this is qualitatively different kind of planning that we have done for the last 7 years. And I know that people have been hearing about SSIS modernization for a long time and have been waiting for that pain to be relieved. And I ask you to wait a little bit longer because we have to put together the blueprint for what that house needs to look like. So we have been working really closely with our county and tribal partners and all of our state partners. Again, people use this at the state level as well in 3 separate agencies. It is used in 87 counties and 3 initiative tribes. So we have a very vast user base. This system does a lot of different things. So we are bringing those folks together for a variety of planning activities. We are also bringing on a vendor with expertise in CWIS planning and implementation to make sure that we're not missing any of the innovations or best practices that are out there. And the 2 main bodies of work that we need to get completed as quickly as we can while also doing it well is developing our RFP, which will be a solicitation for the big new house. We have to describe what that house needs to do as well as we can and make sure that we go into a big project like that with a significant investment from you all, building the right things from the start. We want to avoid change orders and other things that will delay the project later by getting it right now. The other big piece of work that we have to do is developing what's called an implementation advanced planning document. That's a federally required package of documents in order to get our federal participation, our match on the funding for our CWIS solution. And they have lots of requirements around what is required for that. So that's another big piece of work we will be doing. Alongside that, we are going to be working on mapping processes and identifying areas of alignment. Like I said, we have 87 counties and 3 initiative tribes that may do things slightly differently in SSIS. And I think you might have seen one example in Pine County, it sounds like, of what that looks like. And we need to get to a little bit more alignment because what we will be going out to bid for is at its core likely a COTS solution. We're not custom building this from the ground up. That will take another 5 years to do that if we were to go that route. So the base of a new solution will be commercial off the shelf, and we will all need to adjust a little bit on processes with some configuration as well to not cause huge amounts of service disruption to the workers and the processes that are already established in Minnesota, because we do have some unique ones that are statutorily required here. So we know that it will be a hybrid approach between COTS and custom. And it's really more configuration with the technology platforms that exist today and not the same kind of custom development that we might be used to with SSIS. So on this slide, I just detailed a few of the things that we're working on right now. We are staffing up the teams to get prepared for both building this new house and maintaining the one that people live in today. I think that's a really important thing to point out is that no one's moving anytime soon. There are some people, especially with the mandate to focus on child welfare first. SSIS serves 29 different programs, including adult services programs, who will be living in that house a long time, and we want to make it as livable as possible and continue to provide value and enhancements that hopefully can be used in both the old house and the new one, so we're not wasting resources.
Thank you. So I think that that's the end of the SSIS portion. And this is getting a little bit confusing, I know, for folks. So this topic, agenda number 5 is overview of child protection legislation passed in 24 and 25. We started with 25. We've now gone back to 24. And one of the examples of that is, I guess, 24 and 25 is the SSIS. So maybe just pause, see if there are questions about that topic at all in this IT modernization. Not seeing any. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's not so much of a, well, I do have one question and then just, I think I understood right, and so a clarification. The first thing I just want to confirm is for our initiative tribes, we talked about this as we were putting together the language and all of that, but I just want to put it on the record here today that, you know, they have, some of them have their own system. Yes. And so we have it at top of mind that any new system we build will intake that information and not impugn on them or force them to use our system, that they could continue to use the systems they're using and it will interface well with ours. Just a confirmation.
Good. Ms. Hatfield, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, please.
Yes, that is a requirement that we have duly noted. I will say with the type of technology that would be available to us today, with modern APIs that allow for data transfer, that is much more easily accomplished in a newer system. We're thinking about that not just for the tribes, but the counties also have a variety of local solutions that they have went out and purchased to augment SSIS. And in a most ideal situation is we're able to allow folks to use what they want and get the data where it needs to be at the mothership. So in a lot of ways, the new system is a very robust data integration layer with interfaces on top. And that's the piece that we have to really nail to make sure that that all can work as we need it to in a county and locally administered state like Minnesota.
Okay, Representative Hanson, back
And
to
one
you.
last confirmation, and I think this is again what we talked about last year. So because we do have an expedited timeframe around this, that was a pretty clear part of the conversation of the custom built versus off the shelf, as you mentioned. So thank you for that, because I do think time is of the essence around this. And so a lot of times folks will hear if we're getting off the shelf versus custom, like it's a bad thing. But I want to clarify that we're one of the last states to build a new house. From what I understand, that there's only a few left that haven't done anything. I think that was our conversation last year. I see heads shaking no. Okay, that's good. That's a clarification from what I knew last time. So that I was feeling a little bit more confident, but if that's not the case, then can you just assure me that anything we get off the shelf will be flexible to make sure it's in compliance with the with MIFPA and with the African American Family Preservation Act?
Ms. Hatfield.
Yes, thank you. That's why a fully caught solution, it is like technically feasible that we could buy something and implement it in a year, but with what we need here in Minnesota specifically, that's not really a possibility for us. So we're looking at hybrid to get the best of both if we can. So getting those requirements right, and that's what we're working on in the planning phase right now, is a big part of that. What are the MAFPA requirements? What are the ICWA requirements? What are our, we have very unique targeted case management claiming that goes through SSIS. There's a lot of things that we have to look at and make sure that we're describing correctly so that when vendors come to bid on this project, and yes, I want to be the general contractor that builds your house, they correctly scope and price that out for us as well. We ensure that we're getting what we need from the outset, and they don't get to tell us later that, oh, you didn't ask for that, you have to pay us more for that type of thing.
Representative Hanson?
Thank you, Chair. That's exactly what I was looking for. I just wanted to make
Excellent.
sure we all were on the same page and understood, if you're new to the conversation, that this depth of conversation has been going on, and that's what was put in the language, and that's what you're doing. So I appreciate the confirmation. Thank you.
Good stuff. Yeah, Ms. Hatfield, you have something you're going to add, it looked like?
Just thank you for your time and your investment in this. This is, as you've pointed out, and the presentation at the top of this session pointed out, this has been a pain point for workers in Minnesota for a long time trying to do their best. And so we know that time is of the essence, to use your phrase, and we also want to make sure that we're doing it well so we don't deliver something that disrupts what they do even more. What we don't want to have happen is people saying, oh, I miss SSIS.
That seems unlikely.
We're trying to make
but
sure what we do is better. I know that you laugh.
That's a really horror
Can we have
movie.
that laugh on the record?
Horror movie scenario there. Representative Hanson?
Chair, I was just going to recognize for the record that the slate of
Everybody
visitors
laughed.
we have with us from counties found that comical. So thank you
Really-
for that to be not the goal. That is a great goal to put out there.
My last thing I'll say is that
Hatfield?
you had a question about states who have done this before. There are 15 states who have done this, tried, and fully had to start over because that's what happened, is that they built the wrong things, and the folks who had to use it said, we can't use this. This will cause too much problem for us. This will actually make things worse. So there's actually a precedent of that happening multiple times over, and we will not be one of those.
Good. Okay. Thank you so much. I think all done on the IT and modernization part of things then. And continuing with, I know the next couple slides relate to topic number 6, but I think the ones after them are still back on topic number 5. So maybe we want to jump to slide, this is the maltreatment report, because the next set of slides relates to the maltreatment reporting study, which is topic number 6. But the fatality and near fatality review is the one that, so maybe we'll jump members to slide, I guess it's 21, if that's making sense. We've gotten things have gotten a little bit mixed up, I think. but no problem.
It says child fatality. It's number 20.
And are you, well, I'm working off the ones we have, but it may be the ones you have are somehow different than what we have. I'm not sure. Sorry.
I could start talking about it without the slides.
Well, I think, so basically, the next item on our agenda, I think, is we're continuing on item 5, which is the overview of child protection legislation passed. One of those is the reforms that we passed regarding fatality and near fatality reviews. And so hoping that we could have that portion of the presentation now. Is that something that is doable?
It sure is.
Okay. Oh, is it a different?
No, she was just changing it off the thing.
Okay. Give it just a minute here.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. And this was one of the reforms that we passed in 2024 in response to some concerns about how we were reviewing child deaths and near deaths, which is obviously a really important topic for us to examine. So, Commissioner, please.
Thank you. As you said, this was something that was passed for 2025. So starting July 1st, the responsibility for reviewing child fatalities and near fatalities related to maltreatment has shifted to a state mortality review panel, which will be working together with local review teams. State panel will collaborate with local teams on certain cases, while the local teams will independently review all of the other eligible cases. So start with a description of the local review team. Each county child welfare agency has established a multidisciplinary local review team to respond to critical incidents involving children. These teams include professionals such as child protection staff, law enforcement, public health, county attorneys, school personnel, medical professionals, and community-based service providers. So when a critical incident involves an American Indian child, at least one member of the child's tribe is also included in the review process. So the purpose of these local reviews is to strengthen collaboration among the local agencies, enhance protective measures and responses, and support a more proactive and coordinated approach to child safety. DCYF's responsibilities in this new iteration is that we will provide administrative support to the State Child Mortality Review Panel and its chair. This includes compiling and synthesizing relevant information, drafting recommendations and reports for the panel's review and approval, conducting additional information gathering as needed, and organizing and training, and consultation sessions to support both the panel and the local review teams in their work. The joint review process will involve a collaboration between the State Child Mortality Review Panel and the local review team. So this is going to be required in 3 situations. This will be required if the critical incident involves a family, child, or caregiver who is part of either a family assessment or investigation by a local welfare agency within the past year or 12 months. It will be required if the governor or commissioner specifically direct the state panel to review a case, or if the state panel themselves choose to review a case on their own. Those are the 3 times then they would. All other critical incidents that don't meet those criteria will be reviewed solely by the local review team, which is responsible for reviewing all cases not subject to joint review.
And Commissioner, if I can step in, I'll say this at least for myself, maybe other people will find it helpful too, that so every critical incident, which is defined on slide 22, which is a fatality or near fatality in which maltreatment was known or suspected to be contributing cause, every one of those will get a review, and it'll either be by a local team, which is the right side of your slide, or in special cases, it'll be a joint review by the panel and with the local team, and that's in one of those 3 situations where there's prior involvement within the 12 months, or there's some direction by the governor commissioner, or the panel chooses to get involved. Am I saying all that correctly?
You are.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure I'm clear in my own mind at least, and hopefully help a lot of people too. Thanks, please continue.
Sure. So for the joint review, DCYF will be the lead to coordinate the joint review. We'll be working closely with the local review team and the panel. The local agency is responsible just for making sure the right people are present at the review meeting. If the review requires input from a worker or a supervisor with firsthand experience, DCYF staff will conduct debrief interviews with them. These interviews are meant to be done in a supportive and constructive way. They're supposed to be focused on learning and improving outcomes for children and families. The review process for both joint and local reviews begins once it's determined that maltreatment caused or contributed to a critical incident. At that point, the local welfare agency must notify DCYF within 3 business days. DCYF then coordinates the joint review and provides support for local reviews as needed. The review teams have 120 days from the start of the review to complete their work and prepare a report. This report needs to highlight any systemic learnings that could improve child safety and well-being and may include recommendations for changes in policy or practice. Once the local review is complete, the report is sent to DCYF and shared with the review panel within 3 business days. In December of 2026, so starting in December of 2026, we will start to publish an annual report from the Child Mortality Review Panel summarizing their findings.
Oh, and yeah, before we move on, then just finishing that up. So is it in fact the case that this system is in place and operating now? I guess I had thought it hasn't started yet, but maybe I'm wrong.
The law went into effect July 1st.
Okay, so
The panel is not completely appointed yet. there's a couple of
So is it
places.
possible, though, so if a critical incident arises that fits in one of those boxes, like maybe the first box, let's say, a joint review would get started, but kind of would await the panel being fully appointed, or kind of what's the situation right now with that? If you
I
understand what I'm
think
asking.
we're within minutes of having it fully appointed.
And they'll be moving.
I mean, minutes is an exaggeration.
Yeah,
but
no, understood.
It's very, very close. And we've identified an executive director, which is part of the construction of what DCYF provides.
And I'll maybe note for folks, this is a substantially different process that was in place before it and was the result of a lot of work. So we've now described the process. It's just starting, but we kind of can't share yet as to how well it's working because it's just started, right? And so we'll look forward to hearing some more about how that's working. We'll see if there's any questions anybody has regarding this topic. Because if not, we are going to be, just checking online, we will be then done with Area 5 of our agenda. Area 6 is a study that we actually did request in 24-25, but we kind of pulled out to have it be its own agenda item to have us receive this report. So again, looking to see if there are any questions at all, and if not, then I think we're ready to move on to agenda item number 6. Which is the DCYF report on, it's the study on child maltreatment reporting. And
Correct.
so going back a few slides in your presentation, I think to slide 14, I think. Commissioner.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties, okay.
Would you like me to start talking about it anyway? Because I could sure do that.
I think that would make sense. Yeah, I think that we can let Ms. Sommerfeld and Ms. Colburn work. And so just for everybody's understanding that we're in the portion of the DCYF presentation has a slide that says Child Maltreatment Reporting Study. And I suspect that'll be up momentarily. So Commissioner, please.
It looks like it is.
It looks like it
The
is.
study was,
We're going back a few slides, I think, from what we're seeing on the screen at the
yeah, you
moment.
got to go back to,
I think like slide 14, I believe. Yep, there we go.
actually go to 15. There you
And
go.
then you gave us a direction, which is the next slide. Yep, there we go. Commissioner.
So as you said, legislation was passed in 2024, which directed the commissioner of DCYF to conduct a child maltreatment reporting study, which is considering the potential for a statewide centralized child maltreatment reporting system. The study required the department to review reporting processes in other states, including a cost analysis, and make recommendations regarding implementing a statewide system for Minnesota. The next slide. Work began.
And actually, can I apologize? I believe that this came out of a legislative auditor recommendation or was related to that in some way. But even as I'm saying that, I may actually be wrong. I should pull that back. Ms. Sommerfeld, do you happen to recall that? the genesis of
Chair,
this?
members, apologies. I don't know what was happening with the technical issues all of a sudden. So yes, there was an audit finding suggesting, I think, that the state look into that. And then there was, of course, the legislation intended for us to take a review. I think there was an understanding for some reason that there was already a study out there that we would just build off on. And that had been part of what was discussed with the auditor's office or something else, but that did not exist. So we kind of had to start from scratch on this.
Yeah, I don't remember that exactly, but just the idea that this is coming out of a recommendation from the OLA, so.
Yes.
Where are we? Okay, good, thank you. And so, yeah, Commissioner.
Sure. So work began on the study in July of '24, when the department began exploring agencies that were equipped to conduct the study, to contract out. We eventually identified the Improve Group, and they began their work in October of last year. The Improve Group completed and published their recommendations in February 2025, and DCYF then spent March engaging with tribes, counties, and other organizations. Those engagement efforts focused on reviewing findings and informing recommendations, and then the department published the completed report in June, so quite recently. Based on the analysis, the Improve Group outlined several recommendations, including the need for improved clarification of what problem exists that needs to be addressed, the need for more time for meaningful engagement and analysis, the need to learn more from counties that do intake and screening well, and from the Minnesota Adult Protection System. Additional engagement with individuals who make reports into the welfare system would also be needed to do a good report. So what that boils down to is we did not reach a recommendation relating to adopting a centralized system, but several recommendations related to the current systems were developed, and we are working on most of them. So one of the recommendation about awareness of where to report, we plan to do further engagement around this recommendation. This is an ongoing plan. The training for child welfare staff related to intake and screening, this has been shared with Child Welfare Training Academy. Multidisciplinary team training in partnership with Child Welfare Training Academy is planning 3 regional MDT trainings this fall and hope to host a statewide conference next year. Efforts are underway for mandated reporter training enhancement and the creation of a desk aid for intake questions and engagement. That work is underway and will be included in the next version of the child maltreatment intake screening and response path guidelines. And then the other recommendation was system modernization, which you just heard about.
I do want to point out to members that the child maltreatment reporting study is in the packets. It's also, for those watching online, is in the website. There's other materials in there as well, including a progress report from the Supreme Court Council and other things, but just wanted to point that out. So yeah, other things, Commissioner, you wanted to say on this before we open up to questions? We got the engagement sessions. You told us about this slide, yes? Or was there anything you want to say about it?
That was the last slide.
Recommendations, okay. Questions that folks have or comments regarding this? Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. I would like to say that the report, because I'm not on DCYF or any of those.
Children and families, yeah.
Or children and families, and this report was not put on the website until this morning. And that's not bad. It's just one of those things where I didn't get a chance to dig into this yet. And so, and the presentation that we just heard, did not really give any solid type of recommendations, except for we don't have a recommendation of going to a centralized system, which again is fine, but I am not able to, really comment a whole lot on something that I received at early this morning. So.
Yeah, I understand, and this was alluded to, I think, in the slides and a conversation I've had before, that essentially the charge that we gave the agency and then the time within which to get it done, especially with the need to get engagement, and especially engagement from, I learned, it sounded like, especially for, well, a number of populations throughout the state, certainly our tribal nations, meant that it was extremely challenging to get the work done within the amount of time given. We probably should have taken that into account at the start of the process, something we as legislators should have done, who knows. In any case, we're where we are now. I think to Representative Mueller's point, I'd love to have, if we could get some specific recommendations, maybe this is in the study, about sort of if we want to finish up the charge we were looking for last year, sort of what time and money would that take to be able to get the rest of it done. I don't want to put you on the spot now. You may have something that you want to say about that, but would love to get a follow-up. Ms. Sommerfeld, something you want to say about that now, or?
No, sorry, Mr. Chair, Jennifer Sommerfeld, we will look into that and get back to you.
That'd be great, thank you. Yeah, thank you much, yeah. And understood, this is a big, we gave quite a charge. I think we kind of thought it could be done by June 1st of 25. I'm a little confused, I guess I'll say publicly, about how we chose that date, which is sort of the end of a session. Typically, you would do a report at the beginning of a session, because what are we going to do on June 1st of 2025, So I don't know how we came up with that date. I don't quite recall. But in any case, we are where we are. But this does seem like a really useful thing for us to have the recommendations that we were looking for in the first place. And so, yeah, we'll be eager to have you give us the information we need to sort of decide we want to put the extra time and money in on that. So other questions or comments anybody has on this topic? Looking online, et cetera. Okay. And Commissioner, anything else you have about that?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything, so we will, unless, that was not a hand on the, just making sure. Okay, I'm looking on that may have been a comment that I'm seeing on the Zoom. Okay, so then we're moving to our final topic, which is implementation of the Minnesota African American Family Preservation and Child Welfare Disproportionality Act. And we're starting with DCYF, and then we're going to hear from the two counties that were charged with being pilot counties for the act. And so shifting a little bit later in your presentation, there we go. And members of the public, this is, I think, slide 30 in the DCYF presentation. Commissioner, turning back to you.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, the purpose of this act was to reduce disparities in child welfare by prioritizing family preservation, increasing transparency, and providing services that respect cultural values and strengthen families. So as the lead agency, DCYF has a central role in making sure the law is implemented and then sustained with integrity, equity, transparency. We staff the African American Child and Family Wellbeing Unit and Advisory Council, who bring subject matter expertise and lived experience to guide the work. We also coordinate the statewide work group. We support counties through phased implementation, and we are developing a compliance tracking portal with clear milestones. The act requires all child welfare staff to complete cultural competency training by 2027. DCYF is committed to making sure that training is accessible and high quality. While the new training is in development, we're actively working on it. The active efforts training offered from September 2024 and onward, as well as DEI resources shared by the Training Academy, do meet the requirement for that. DCYF will also be collaborating with the Children's Justice Initiative to have training available to the courts and legal partners like judges, attorneys, guardians ad litem, like they were talking about with the Supreme Court Counsel earlier, the need for some of that, so that everyone involved in family decisions is grounded in a culturally responsive practice. Better data is going to be central to the act. DCYF is collecting disaggregated data to identify disparities and improve outcomes, with annual reports will be shared publicly and with the legislature. And finally, the implementation is going to require investment, does require investment. DCYF is administering the annual grants to expand culturally responsive community-based services, prioritizing providers in counties with the highest disparities. Ultimately, success is going to depend on families having access to essential supports like housing, education, food security. So just a reminder of that. The phase-in, which is where we are right now, involves three core partners. It's DCYF, It's Ramsey and Hennepin counties, the phase-in counties, who you'll be hearing from later, and the statewide work group.
And I'll say that I had referred to them as pilot counties before, but that was wrong. They are in fact phase-in counties. Hennepin had a pilot before the act was passed, but now they're phase-in counties. So thanks.
Correct. Thank you. We are working closely with the counties and the work group to implement the law during this phase-in period. Our goal is to identify during this time what's working, to address challenges, and to build a strong foundation for when we do the statewide rollout. We are trying to make sure that information flows both ways, decisions are shared, that the intentional efforts that we're putting forward ensure that we're able to work together. So as part of our implementation of, and I'm going to refer to this as MAFBA CWDA, saves a little bit of time, we have 8 dedicated committees within DCYF leading the work. Each is responsible for advancing specific parts of the law to ensure consistent, effective, and accountable implementation. The African American Child and Family Wellbeing Unit is a unit that predates the legislation. We already had this before this was passed, but it's at the center of the work, leading systems change and helping to guide our equity efforts across the department. The Agency Oversight Committee is focused on compliance and accountability, building tools and structures we need to track implementation, including definitions, case review processes, and remediation plans. And you can see the rest of the committees there. I won't spend a lot of time talking about them unless you have questions.
Doesn't look like it for now, but
Okay. So there are a few key points on the timeline that I want to talk about that will show sort of the progress of the work and where we are and how we're doing. Statewide work group was established in April of 25 and held its first meeting on April 8th. A key milestone came in June when contracts were finalized and the phase-in counties each received a one-time payment of $2.5 million. Active efforts training is now available to child welfare staff in non-phase-in counties, helping them prepare for their implementation in 2027, and that training is ongoing. To date, we've had 41 training sessions and 563 child welfare workers and supervisors have been trained. Looking ahead, the statewide work group's interim report, case review reports, and a compliance system are due in January of next year. And then the final implementation plan is due September 1st, 2026, with a statewide rollout starting January 1, 2027. So the phase-in ends July 1st of 27. In November of 28, the commissioner will issue case review guidance to counties, and counties will submit their first reports to the advisory council, the commissioner, and legislature by October 1st, 2029. And annual guidance and reporting will follow that.
Commissioner, clarifying question. In July, so between January and July of 2027, I'm a little confused because if statewide implementation is happening starting January of 27, phase-in ends in July, but so I guess what's happening between those months? Like, is the law is in operation around the state, or does it not kick in? If you could just clarify that point.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what that means is, so the 2 phase-in counties, they will complete their phase-in, but the law starts January 1st. There's there flexibility in that? Go ahead.
Ms. Sommerfeld?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Jennifer Sommerfeld, we'll follow up on that to confirm, but I believe it's because there is a report that I think is due on July of 2027 following completion of the phase-in.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure. We'll get back to you, but I do think that's when the report is due.
That is when the report's due.
I can follow up with you.
Just clarify, it looks like you may get some,
Overlap between.
getting some assistance.
That's what he just said.
It's on purpose, like it just is.
Okay.
We'll follow up with you to
Commissioner,
confirm on
okay.
everything.
Yeah, just sort of understanding, like, if, what's the difference between February of 2027 and like September of 2027? It seems like in both cases, the act is in use all throughout the state, including Ramsey and Hennepin. So yeah, if you can just clarify. Thank you.
That is correct.
Okay, question, and then, you've got a few more, I guess.
I have a few more slides.
Yeah, okay.
I want to talk a little bit about the statewide launch.
Okay.
So we're moving towards statewide implementation, and we're learning a lot from Hennepin and Ramsey counties and their processes. And we've identified several challenges and priorities that need to be addressed. One of the most urgent issues is workforce capacity. They have high caseloads, they have staffing shortages, burnout are putting real strain on the counties. Frontline staff need time, they need support, and they need the resources to do their jobs. We have also heard widespread calls for clearer and more consistent guidance, both in interpreting policy and in operational expectations. Counties clearly, we're hearing across the board, they want to do the right thing, but feel that there's some ambiguity in the law that gets in the way. Culturally specific services remain limited across the state, and community-based prevention infrastructure is still underdeveloped in many areas. This is a critical equity issue and an opportunity. Concerns about sustainability have surfaced. County staff have highlighted the administrative burden, especially around documentation, and questioned whether current funding levels are enough to support any real transformation. So looking forward, it's going to be important to prioritize timely, adequate funding, invest in community-based and culturally grounded services, align training with real-world practice, and clarify the roles in the statute to ensure that everyone understands what they're doing. That said, excitement around the work is growing. So we're getting, communications from non-phase-in counties who are showing a real strong interest in actively engaging with what we're learning as we go. So to maintain momentum and transparency, we do share weekly updates through our MAFPA CWDA implementation newsletter, and anyone interested is encouraged to subscribe to that and stay connected. We're also hosting quarterly webinars geared toward non-phase-in counties, also open to anyone who would like to participate to highlight the progress and the learnings that we're finding. Our September webinar coming up will focus on lessons from Hennepin and Ramsey counties, offering insights into what's working and what we need to continue to refine. Some counties are already asking how they can begin the work ahead of the 2027 rollout, and so that enthusiasm is kind of fun. Statewide work group has included an early recommendation to expand the phase-in to a few additional counties, including smaller or more rural counties, so those with different demographics and operational structures than Hennepin and Ramsey. And we also want to acknowledge that the work is getting national attention. Minnesota is the first state in the country to pass and implement this kind of legislation. Other states we're finding have explored similar ideas, but they've either stalled or voted down or been abandoned. Our leadership team recently met with some counterparts in California who are watching our progress closely and reached out. They wanted to learn more about how this came together, all the way from the legislative work through all the realities. So we're learning, we're adjusting, other states are looking at us, but we're really committed to making this work.
We got a question, Representative Hansen. Representative Hansen?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. I wanted to just step back to the building blocks for the strong statewide launch. I think a lot of you probably know what I'm going to say right now because we've had long conversations about this. But I spent most of last session asking for really clear, concise things that we wanted to change, if there were things, because I was hearing similar things from different folks that were unclear about some of the policy language and such. And unfortunately, what I was met with was just, we should delay it. That's not an answer from me, not from you guys, not from DCUF. I want to be really clear about that. This was from on the ground of what these unclear things were, because there was energy and support for clarifying those policy guidelines. So should counties be the ones that have those questions, I just want to put it on the record that we do expect clear information about what you need us to clarify and make sure we're getting that data so I can help do that. I asked lots of times last year. And every single person, whether it was, on my side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle in our body, or it was folks from counties or lobbyists or whoever, and each time it was just more money and delay. More money, I understand. That part makes sense. But the delay piece, and so I mentioned this, I think, last time at one of the other task force meetings, was somebody had said something similar at that meeting, and I pushed back because if we want to make these clarifications, we need that given to us. so that we can do that. So not, again, not on DCYF. I know that we've always worked really closely and well together, but I just want it really clear that next year I'm not going to accept just delay it as an answer. If we want to get these things done and get the policy pieces there, then I would love to have that so I can start working on that as sooner rather than later, because these are things I think we have broad agreement on our side. So it is possible and probable that we can help clarify whatever needs to happen. But we have to have honest conversations with each other too. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, you moving to the statewide work group progress? Is that what you
Yes.
doing
thank
that?
you.
Okay.
Yeah, so the statewide work group, one of the three pieces that I mentioned earlier, was established to guide the implementation. Its members were appointed by Commissioner Brown, and it includes parents, advocates, county representatives, and child welfare professionals. So in addition to monthly full group meetings, members participate in smaller action teams that meet every 2 weeks to focus on key areas of implementation. The statewide work group is currently thoroughly reviewing the legislation, identifying recommendations and implementation needs, to your point. They formed 4 action teams focused on data, legislative changes, compliance, and the phase-in program. I want to point out a few key dates. On August 15, draft recommendations will be due to DCYF from the statewide work group. August 18th, the work group's final review and vote on the recommendations, and on September 1st, the interim report will be submitted to DCYF's leadership. The work group's draft recommendations are reflecting a strong commitment to equity, accountability, and community voice, calling for clearer language in the law, greater cultural responsiveness, and consistent and flexible systems that reflect the needs of local communities. Their vision includes fair oversight and better data, and they're asking us to shift away from punitive approaches toward a model of accountability grounded in learning, support, and continuous improvement. Ultimately, this is about building a child welfare system that families can trust, that keeps them safely together, and that honors their strengths.
Maybe we'll, Representative Hanson. I think she's
Thank
almost
you.
done, but Representative Hanson, yeah.
I should have waited before I made my comments or just turned the page, so I appreciate that.
Well, you just helped.
It's still important.
Well, it's a good
important
tee-up,
point to
right?
make.
This is
Yep.
the teamwork, right?
Yep.
So I'm really glad to see that, because I was like, I mean, obviously, I was really disappointed in the conversations last year, and that if there was things we needed to do, we want to do that. So I'm looking forward to this. I would say to anybody watching, please, now's the time to get your feedback in. Right? If you have concerns or questions from any county, or you're a social worker and you have questions, you have to get this information to these teams if you want your voice included in this, whoever you are out there, the royal you. Because if we don't do that, I don't know how well we can incorporate later changes that one person will bring forward. It will be a much stronger policy proposal when we know that we have the support behind it from the statewide work group and that. So anybody out there, make sure you work with them, please.
Great point. Great point. Commissioner, it looks like is anything further? Looks like I will thank Sarah Florman, Legislative Director for Child Safety and Permanency, pulling together a lot of material on many, many different topics in this packet, and so really grateful to her for her work. We'll see if there are other questions or comments that folks have before we bring up the phase-in counties. And looking to Representative Hanson, yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No,
I had so
that's
many
good.
questions. Thank you,
Dive on
Chair.
in. No, good.
My last piece is I want to make sure, I think I heard this right in the beginning, but in terms of kind of the lead-up work and the support work for the counties and all of that, everybody's required to do these trainings. Is that correct? I see your head nodding. Okay. And my worry is that I don't want to get to implementation. You know, it's, let's say, fall of '26 when we're not in session, and counties saying, I haven't had time to. So I would just ask that the county representatives make sure that they're communicating clearly with all of their counties or your friends or whoever to make sure that they're all doing that, because I think that would be a worst-case scenario. I'm seeing that in some of the work I do in other issues, where we gave 2 years of lead time for cities and counties to come up with a process that they then panicked when the day came and they actually had to execute it. And so despite having the support there. So I just want to make sure we don't end up here because, cannabis is not as big of a deal as children. And so we want to make sure that we're obviously ready for this too. So thank you.
Good point. We'll see if we have other questions or comments. Not seeing any. So I think Commissioner, Ms. Somerville, thank you so much. I guess stick around as you have been. Appreciate it. And we'll call up, I believe that Hennepin County is going to be going first. So we say Booker or Mr. Oh, okay. Okay, Mr. Badabosi. Glad to have you up. And I believe that we've got a presentation from Hennepin. I recall that we do. So folks will find that in their packets and online as well. Hennepin and Ramsey being the two phase-in counties for the act. Okay, and Quasey's online, I guess. So I'm not sure which of you is going to be speaking, but whoever's going to be speaking, if you can just please identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. Good afternoon. My name is Quasey Booker, and I'm the Director of Children and Families at Hennepin County. I apologize for not being there in person. However, I had a Casey convening I had to attend before this got on my calendar. But happy to be here today with the team to present on the progress of the Minnesota African American Family Preservation and Child Welfare Disproportionality Act implementation in Hennepin County. And to ensure that I meet the timeline, I'll be referring to the legislation as the act going forward. Next slide, please. Since the act legislation passed in May of 2024, we've worked closely with Ramsey County and the Department of Children, Youth, and Families to design a phase-in period that promotes learning and best practices for statewide implementation. In Hennepin, we conducted a thorough comparative review of our entire case continuum to generate solutions that aligned with the legislation. We had a team of 6 planners that worked closely with service areas across children and families and the county attorney's office to identify existing practices that need to be strengthened and gaps in services that we needed to address to properly implement the legislation. Next slide, please. From there, we had subject matter experts began developing detailed work plans for the phase-in period and beyond. We had sub-work groups identified our core strategies, task activities, and resources needed, including updates to practice, evaluation, communication, training, and technology, as well as other infrastructure changes. An example of tasks and strategies included increasing the use of family group decision-making meetings throughout our case continuum, documenting protocols for including active efforts in court petitions, assigning permanency workers early on in cases, and providing families with information about legal representation. Infrastructure for ongoing analysis and continuous improvement was built into our phasing program so we can quickly respond to what we learn from implementation in real time. Next slide, please. DCY defined the eligible phasing population to include African American children, Native American children not subject to ICWA, and multiracial children who have at least one racial background as African American or Native American, and again, not subject to ICWA. Between January 1st and June 30th of this year, an initial target of 30% of eligible screening reports were assigned to receive services under the legislation. As of July 1st, we've increased that number to 40%. The portion of eligible reports assigned will increase by 10% each quarter throughout the 2-year period until we reach full implementation for all eligible families in January of 2027. The pace of the phase-in period was identified to support our capacity to train staff, work with our court partners, work with providers to tailor their services, give providers time to build up their service array to meet the needs of families, collect data and shift resources accordingly, and finally to assess the need for additional resources. This strategy has been successful for implementation and process improvements.
Mr. Booker, can I ask a question? These percentages, and maybe you said this, I'm sorry, but the percentages I'm thinking 30%, 30%, 40, 50, 60, those are percentages of what?
Those are percentages of cases that qualify for the phase-in. So we were not we talked to DCYF since the legislation changes about 90% of our case continuum.
Sure.
We, along with Ramsey County, talked about how we can phase in this effectively without going 100%, and so we came up with this structured phasing approach. If that's helpful.
And this may be a confusing question, but is it the percentage of total cases or the percentage of cases that otherwise would be eligible for the act?
Is the percentage of cases that will be eligible for the act.
Okay, well, so even by the end of 2026, you still won't be only 90% of cases that would be eligible. So 10% of cases that in fact the law would apply to would not be receiving the coverage of the law. Is that right?
I think it will be. There's some definitions that needs to be clarified. For example, we're unable to identify, and I think DCYF is working on this, socioeconomic status. At our intake report, we're unable to identify disabilities during the intake process. So as DCYF works to structure those definitions and our ability to identify those at intake, we will get to 100%.
Okay. But by the end of 26, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. I may have another question related to that later, but yeah, please continue.
Next slide, please. Our phasing period is designed to be a continuous learning and improvement process. We are closely monitoring our data and collecting feedback from staff and other stakeholders, including the court partners and residents, to understand where resources are needed and they can be quickly applied. The implementation team continues to meet twice per month and focuses on strategy and problem solving to reduce implementation barriers. We've added 4 additional staff to our continuous improvement team to meet the 100% case review requirements. We continue to meet monthly with Ramsey and DCYF to share progress and support continual alignment during this phase-in period. Next slide, please. Most of our child protective social workers have received active efforts training from DCYF, and we've developed an enhanced active efforts training internally for all of our staff. The first training cohort began in July with supervisors and will continue as we have all staff trained. Active efforts are varied and tailored to each child and family needs. At a high level, staff are engaging non-custodial parents and kin, removing barriers and engaging support networks to develop robust safety plans, utilizing emergency payment authorizations to minimize the risk of out-of-home placement, or provide relatives and kins with resources needed to provide care, and connecting families with culturally appropriate support whenever possible. For children and families receiving ongoing case management, staff assist families with appointment scheduling, transportation, and wraparound care, coordinating to connect them with culturally appropriate services and reduce the number of providers. Caseworkers hold family group decision-making meetings and safe and connected frameworks from the onset of our case to bring support networks together in safety planning and identifying gaps in any services. Next slide, please. Some data on how far we've come. So far, our data looks promising for reducing disparities and preserving families. The data you see on the slide represents children and families involved in cases that were assigned to the Act from January 1st to July 31st of this year. There were 687 cases that were assigned to the Act, 33% of all eligible screened-in reports. 47 cases have opened to ongoing child protection case management, which is 6.8% of the cases assigned. 47 children involved in 19 cases have experienced out-of-home placement, which is 2.8% of the cases that were assigned. From January 1st to June 30th, our initial target for cases assigned to the Act was 30% of eligible screening reports, during which time 555 cases were assigned. On July 1st, we increased the target to 40%, and as of August 8th, there have been 168 cases assigned. Some of the cases recently assigned remain open in assessment and may transition to ongoing case management once the assessment is complete. And it's still too early in our analysis to compare outcomes of families receiving services under the legislation with outcomes prior to implementation. Next slide, please. I wanted to share some challenges that we've had thus far with implementation. SSIS continues to be a challenge for us, and I'm sure for Ramsey as well. SSIS currently lacks the necessary functionality to collect or report on data required by the legislation, including child characteristics, and are included in the statutory definition of disproportionately represented child, like socioeconomic status or disability status. The system also cannot track referrals to services or service delivery outside of case notes in each individual case. Another barrier to the successful implementation is the current capacity to meet the needs of families receiving active efforts, particularly in areas of substance abuse and mental health. We have analyzed our data to determine where service needs need to be increased to meet the needs of families in the phase-in program. And we're still waiting on the $500,000 in funding from DCYF to be able to go out and increase our service array in those areas. I will now pause to see if there are any questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Booker about Hennepin? I will have a question, though it's actually won't be for Hennepin, though it uses a Hennepin slide. But we'll look and see if anybody has a question. Let's see that they don't. Could you move back to the slide that showed the percentages? And my question is for, I think it's for DCYF actually. And my question is just, one more, or maybe one or two more, sorry. It's the one that says intentionally phased phase-in period. Go back to that slide. There it is, yeah. I'm just sort of thinking about the question we've been asking about the phase-in counties and then going statewide. I understand what Hennepin describes about why it is that you are phasing in the percentages and by the end of 2026 getting to 100%. I'm wondering whether the same is true for counties when the law kicks in January 27, pardon me. Will counties have the same ramp-up opportunity? What was the, I don't recall how the law was written for the phase-in counties, if this was something that sort of was written one way and DCYF allowed the counties to do, the phase-in counties to do this. So Commissioner, if you can just sort of, hopefully my question is clear, if you could just comment on it.
Thank you, it is clear. The law was written so that phase-in process was only available to Hennepin and Ramsey counties.
Okay, but of course they also have they immediately started working with the law, and the counties that are going to kick in January 27 will have had several years to prepare. So that's a different sort of thing. So those counties then starting in January 27, the expectation is they'll be ready to join with Hennepin and Ramsey in accommodating all children who are eligible for the law, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you. I'll see if there are questions that folks have. That's really helpful. Thanks. Representative Hansen.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I heard you say something at the end there about funding you were waiting for. Can you just enunciate a little bit more about that? And if we can help, let us know how.
Mr. Booker?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Representative, for the question. So the legislation designated $2.5 million to Ramsey and Hennepin County each to help with the phasing, and then another $500,000 to for cultural competence aspects of the work. We recently received the $2.5 million, and we're waiting on the $500,000 from DCYF. We continue to check in on a regular basis as to when the funding will be received. I also would like to note that I think both fundings, and Michelle, who's in the room, can correct me if I'm wrong, but both the $2.5 and $500,000 come with a spend by date of July 31st of 2026. So there's added emphasis on us receiving the money to be able to get it out to community providers to ensure that community-based services, culturally responsive services, can be incorporated into our service array.
Representative Hansen, follow-up?
Thank you. And I think for Hennepin and Ramsey, this it may be a given, but it's my understanding that you do have some of that in place already around cultural competency training. I imagine there may be some counties that need to do more of that than others, obviously. But is this supplementing work you've already been doing?
Mr. Booker?
Thank you, Chair. It is increasing the service array of cultural competence services. For us to meet the active efforts criteria of the legislation, we need to refer families as quickly as possible to culturally competent services. And to do so, we need to get money to providers to increase the availability of services. For example, if we have a family that's part of the phase-in program that has substance abuse issues, we have to refer them to a culturally competent substance abuse provider. And because there's a need for those providers, we have to find funding so that those providers can increase the number of services the number of clients they're able to service. I hope that answers
It
your
looks
question.
like it does, Representative Hansen.
Yes, that does make sense. And so I think what I would like other counties to take away from that is, don't wait. It's a good time. It's always a great time to do the right thing. And the right thing is to have culturally competent staff. And the right thing has always been to refer people to culturally competent services, if that's what they need, whether it's Indigenous services or whatever they're looking for that aligns with what that family needs in order to prioritize and uplift our belief in Minnesota that family preservation is of the utmost importance. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Looking to see if there's other questions, and I don't see any. And so thank you so much, Mr. Booker. Thank you, Mr. Bonamosi. And we'll bring up Ramsey County as our final, Bobby Jo Potter. Final presentation here as the other phase-in county for the act. And once you settle in, whoever's going to be speaking first, if you can identify yourself and then proceed.
All right. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Bobby Jo Potter. I currently serve as the Deputy Director of Children and Family Services for Ramsey County, and I'm honored to be here to speak about our work that we've been doing as the phase and implementation of MAFTA. We're going to get our slide up.
Yeah, we'll get the slides going. And of course, members of the public, there's a presentation in the packet and also online.
While we're getting the slide ready, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody. There's been a lot of work and lots of conversations and hard conversations, passion, heartfelt words that have gone into bringing this to the point that it's at today, and it couldn't be here. I think in Ramsey County, I count this as a success because we've been valuing this work, but it shows the commitment that we've all come together and continue to come together to ensure that this is successful. So I want to take a moment to just share that as we get through to our first slide. What we're going to talk about is our North Star, so what really guides our implementation, and I think I've heard a lot of conversation today about our community and community be involved in coming up with the solutions that are going to best meet their needs, and that's something that's very dear to Ramsey County. That's work that has been going on within the county for several years now, and this law actually gave us an opportunity to kind of catapult that work that we've been doing forward. And so we focus on family preservation and sharing that power with community, and how we've demonstrated that is by some of the work that we've done with them that I'll detail throughout the presentation. So this is a whole division effort. This is work, right? The law really is applying to child protection cases that are screened in at the point of maltreatment. However, the work of families and serving families can't be individualized and should not be siloed out. And so we approach this from a holistic view. And what that means is not just our child protection staff are trained in this, we've also ensured that our licensing staff and other staff within other program areas have access to this knowledge and information and know how important it is that we're all working towards the same goal together. We've embedded MAFPA into everyday practice, so it's not just a forms and a checklist for us. It's a perspective, and it's a way that we view how we're serving families and how we get to those outcomes that we're all striving for. And that really means that the families in the community that we're working with are the ones who are the experts and hold the knowledge and information that we're so dearly trying to get to provide them those supports and services for them to be successful. We're really centering our work on family connection and not that system control. And so this law is awfully reminiscent of the ICWA and MIFPA, and it values that family connectedness and that connection to culture and community. And that's something that's really valuable, not just for families to thrive within our communities, but it's really important for those children. For those children who are impacted by the removal and trauma that comes along with it. They need that connection to their family and their community for their identity. And so that's really important work for us, because in order for us to thrive as a community and as a state, we need our children. We also are taking the approach of One Ramsey. So this is something that, we're working within our community and with the families that are being impacted by our work. We're also sitting at the table with DCYF. We're sitting with Hennepin County. And we're also reaching out to our other service areas within Ramsey County, because we're all serving the same community. And when we're responding to these families that are often struggling, some of the services and supports could be accessed through other departments within the county service provisions. And so we're reaching out to those other providers and asking them to join us on this journey to serve families from a holistic county approach. So in order for this to be successful, we have to have strong community partnerships. And again, sharing power within Ramsey County and with our community partners is something that we've been doing. We've leaned into our Transforming Systems Together work, and that was some work that was really spearheaded and involved community that had been impacted, elders from within the community, and they used child protection as the North Star. So we've utilized this opportunity as a chance to continue to carry that meaningful work forward. We've expanded on our current relationships, and so we're exploring our current contracts, the relationships that we have with some of the providers within the community to see if there aren't other ways that we could make some adjustments to the current ways that we're providing service, or see if we can dream up new services that can be beneficial and impactful to communities. We're not just focusing, though, on those that we already have relationships with. We understand that this law is going to expand and impact other communities, and so we're also focusing on reaching out to those communities that we don't necessarily have relationships or strong relationships with, and are trying to lean in and ensure that we build those relationships and explore opportunities for those communities to provide services to our residents. We also, here in Ramsey County, pulled together an advisory committee that's helping to guide the direction. Through that work, that community or that committee involves executive level folks from Ramsey County, but most importantly, impacted individuals and elders who've been doing the work within community for many years and are helping to identify gaps and some solutions to come along with those gaps that we identify. We spent time with them helping to share what the work looks like here in Ramsey County, and then they've helped us to guide where we should focus the majority of our efforts. One of the things that we're doing is we're looking at ways that we can sustain funding and resources for community agencies. And so this is something that we value. And with the current funding, we find it very helpful. And there's going to be a need for us to be able to figure things out for the long term. And so we're looking within our own budgets to see if there aren't some funding strings that are already available to us that we couldn't then adjust to meet these needs. And then also just exploring with other community partners if there's some grants or things that we can apply to help in this area, as we know it's a need across the board. All right, and in order for this to be successful, we've got our community at the table, but we can't have successful implementation without a staff or a workforce there to be able to pull this work forward and serve our community. So in Ramsey County, we are not quite unique. I think there's a workforce stabilization efforts that are going off across the state. However, prior to MAFPA implementation, Ramsey County was unique in that we were experiencing high levels of turnover. And so in order to implement this law, we've really been focusing on our foundation. And so trying to curtail some of the burnout that's happening as a result of our workers with high caseloads and the high documentation demands. And how we've done this is through training, and the training that's been offered by DCYF has been really helpful, and we've also supplemented it with some of our own trainings. So for instance, the active efforts area, that's training all of our child protection staff and support staff have been trained in and have attended that training. We've also supplemented it with some safety versus risk training, so really drilling down with our staff the difference between safety versus risk so that we can help clarify to our partners in the courtroom or even to families so that they know specifically why we're involved or why their children can't be in their home with them. Additionally to that, we're also looking at our safety planning, providing some best practice guides, and really drilling into the day-to-day implementation of the act, as safety planning is a requirement as part of an active effort. Additionally, we're looking at developing our comprehensive onboarding. So we have an onboarding plan for our child protection workers, and it's part of our infrastructure building and stabilization. We've been onboarding our workers, but as a part of the work with MAFPA and the trainings that we've participated in DCYF, we're going to be developing our own internal culturally competency training to supplement what we currently do, in addition to some active efforts and more focused work on just our foundation as a whole, so that when our support staff and child protection staff come together to talk about cases, they're all speaking the same language. We do need more staff to help reduce the caseloads. Ideally, active efforts really means how that translates to families is time with them. And so I think many of us can imagine what it's like running from meeting to meeting, and in the rush we forget things, or there are things that we aren't able to do and things that we miss. Similarly with families, when our workers have high caseloads, it's hard for our staff to be able to meet all of the needs of the families in the ways that they would like to, right? We've got child protection workers and staff who sign up to do this work because it's really heart-driven for them, and a lot of times they're spending that time behind the computer screen, and that limits our ability to make those impactful relationships that really help families become successful.
As we're going to go to Representative Hanson. You've got a
Before
couple
you
more
move on
slides here.
from
Representative
workforce-
Hanson.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Chair. I just
No
wanted to talk about workforce stabilization a little bit, because this is something I've been talking about in the legislature for years. And I think, obviously everybody knows that I've been working on title protection, that we have people who call themselves social workers at counties that are not educated nor licensed in social work. And I think that presents a misrepresentation to the public, because the understanding is, if you're a social worker, you're trained in how to handle your burnout. You're trained in high caseloads. You're trained in some of these things. Not to say that somebody with a social services degree or a human services degree isn't, right? That's definitely part of that training as well. But I do think it's important that we're transparent with people, and not to say that we have to hire social workers for all these positions. That's not it either. But in conjunction with our higher education institutions here, and in conjunction with some of our pathways programs at our high schools, or if it's PSEO programs, we can help lead folks into these pathways a little bit better. Because there's like a detriment to also saying it's social worker, right? Because that's like kind of scary for some people. I have to get licensed and supervision and do these internships, and I already have a full-time job, right? There's all these barriers to becoming a social worker. Whereas, with those titles of what these workers are called, we can do more work and I think entice more people to get into this workforce if we also kind of examine some of those things too. So I'm going to continue my legislation to say that you have to have a degree or at least a degree and or a license to call yourself a social worker at the county. I know that's something that we've done since the 90s, but those days have got to at some point be put behind us, so that we can address the workforce in a different way. Because sometimes when counties are saying, I need more social workers, I'm like, well, do you? Or do you need more human services workers and social services workers? Because they're slightly different. And it's a lot faster for school, too, and a little bit less burdensome to do that. And, a licensed profession is a privilege. It costs money to get supervision. It costs money to get licensed. And so if we really want to make sure we're addressing that side of the workforce issues, I think that's really important, too. So if there's certain things like that, please let me know. I'm happy to help with that, especially in the higher education realm. I've talked about doing free college for social workers, because we are in such a short, we have so much need for it, and finding ways that we can supplement that. Obviously, our North Star Promise program, I want to shout that out. That's still there. We were able to keep that going. And so folks do have opportunities to get trained in that. And so those are things that will help you. If somebody comes to your job and comes into the position with those skills to address burnout, with the skills already to do that, I have a feeling that would help. I see you nod your head. So.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hanson. And we'll turn back to the rest of the presentation.
All right, so looking forward, this, like I shared in the beginning, is something that is deeply rooted and connected to Ramsey County's mission, vision, and values, and so we're committed to the success of this implementation and serving our African American community, active efforts in ensuring that their children are connected to their culture and their community. So regardless of what happens today or hereafter, this is something that we're going to continue to strive towards. And it's not going to go away after today. I know that there's lots of support here in the room and across the state, and so we're really excited to see this roll out for the rest of the state. However, there are some obstacles that we're going to need to overcome, and some of them I mentioned that were already existing prior to MAFA within Ramsey County that we're going to continue to work on. And just wanting to acknowledge, similarly, like what you said, the workforce shortages across the state are going to be maybe a bit more challenging for some of our more rural areas. So I know, talking specifically to Ramsey County, but our structure is also a little bit different than Hennepin County. So I just want to uplift that the structures that each county has will implement or will impact their ability to be successful with implementation. So again, hitting home, if you haven't started now, you should start looking at how you're going to roll this out. And then we are, like I said, committed to preserving families, promoting child and family safety while sharing power with the community. So we'll continue to partner with community. We're looking at other co-design efforts that we can walk alongside and develop some of the solutions to the gaps and issues that we're identifying through the work that we're doing already with community. And then again, continuing to build on what's already been brought to us before. I think a lot of times when these things happen, we ask community, what should we do, or give us some information, and we've already asked them time and time again. And so what we're committed to is demonstrating to our community that has given us feedback that we're continuing to pull your work forward and ensure that it shows up and we're making changes in a way that they approve and are hoping that we make those changes. We'll continue to focus on our community partnerships, lean into our partners at Hennepin County, at Ramsey County, and then also our partners with MAXA that we're communicating with and sharing our struggles and our successes with this law. I think today we can happily report that we're meeting the current phase-in requirements of 40% applying to cases that are phase-in eligible. So we're meeting that requirement, and we're looking forward to those further definitions and clarity so that we can continue to meet the expectations and requirements. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation and your work. We'll see if there are questions that folks have for you. Looking online and otherwise, not seeing. Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. I actually just wanted to ask a question about some of the clarification that you asked earlier.
Yeah.
When the assistant commissioner came up and said that in the law it was appropriate for them to have that ramp up time, the percentages, right? The 30%, the 40% of how well they're implementing this.
I should maybe pause you. I don't know that I heard her say it's appropriate. I think she was just trying. That's how the law is written.
Right,
is to allow.
Sorry, that it was the law was written that way.
Right.
But that in 27 we are going to have the expectation that the rest of the counties are supposed to be going 100% and 2027 is that?
Well, as I understood, and I'll invite somebody to come up and correct me because I was the one who asked the question a few minutes ago. Well, my understanding about the way the law is written, again, somebody please correct me, is to say that 2 counties are phasing in, so like literally, right, they're doing this phase in. Other counties, instead of phasing in, have been given multiple years of not having to comply at all. So they get all their systems prepared. So then the thought is that they're ready to go on January 27 because they had, so instead of ramping up, instead they're sort of given, the chance to get their systems in place, learn from the 2 counties, maybe even learn from some more phasing counties, depending how it works, and then be ready to go on January 27. So I think that was the understanding.
That's what I just want. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted some clarification on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was wondering about that myself, obviously. We'll see if other folks have questions. Not seeing any. Thank you so much to our Ramsey County team, fellow Ramsey County person over here. Thank you for that. We did not actually attain a quorum. I was going to make a comment once we did, or potentially at the beginning, just acknowledging one of the senators who's not with us is, of course, Senator Hoffman, and just to say that the thoughts of, of course, we're thinking about Speaker Emerita Hortman and Mark Hortman and the loss of them. And she was such a champion for children, worked especially on prevention and early childhood education issues. And so thinking a lot about her. And then in this context, thinking about Senator Hoffman and his wife Yvette and their daughter Hope. And I'm so grateful that they are doing as well as they are. I was at a national conference last week, and Senator Hoffman had a video that was shared, and he just was, of course, just full of such energy and passion as he is for the most vulnerable in our state, certainly including children. So he's such a valuable member of this task force, and so we're thinking about him and sending our love and support to him and to his entire family today as well. And so we will, I think then what we'll do is hold off for approving minutes till a future meeting when there is in fact a quorum. We'll be able to do that for the prior couple minutes. We'll see if we have any questions anybody has before we adjourn. and I am not seeing anything or hearing anything. Thank you so much to the folks who pulled all these materials together. Chair Champion was not able to join us. He'll be the chair for the next meeting, and so we'll look to him as far as an agenda and timing. And thank you all, members, and with that, we are adjourned.